So when you're hosting a web application, you often need something like a database to track when people register and when they create data on your application. And the way I'm doing this on this writing platform is I have a Postgres database, which is hosted on Railway. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by Railway. I just really like their service. I think it's very easy to host your applications there. And so you'll see I have a Postgres database here, and I have all these different tables that kind of keeps track of the information my users are adding in. But when you're in production, one thing that you should always keep in mind is what happens if this were to get corrupted or the database just gets deleted. And you should probably have some type of backups in place so that you can restore your database back to a previous point in time so that users don't lose all their data, because that's probably not going to land your business in a very good position. And in fact, maybe you could even get sued by dropping everyone's data. So at the very least, you need to make sure that the data you're storing, you have some type of backup system in place. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. It's going to be a short video. I'm going to talk about how I'm currently backing up my Postgres database for this production application. So inside of Railway, there's actually a way to spin up something called a template. And in here, I went ahead and said Postgres backup. And there's a nice template here that you can click, and then you can configure it to basically automatically pull all the data from your Postgres database. It probably does like a Postgres SQL dump, which is going to generate a giant SQL file that has like all of your data in it. So if we look at this backup cron that I generated, when you configure it, you can give it a couple of settings. Now how this works is you give it access to your database. So like these two are basically communicating. And this thing is going to pull the data and do a SQL dump. And then it's going to store all the data into an S3 bucket. So to get this set up, I had to create an access key and a secret key. I had to define like my bucket name, what region my bucket's living on. So the one configuration I do want to point out is that there's a cron schedule. So you can actually just do like a cron string. And I think this is saying every day at 5 a.m., just go ahead and back up this database. Depending on your project's needs, you may need to back up more often. Maybe you need to do it every hour. It really just depends. But after I have this cron job set up, if I go and look at my S3 bucket that I created, you'll see that I have a couple of database backups that have been stored already to me. So there's basically a tar gzip file. And in the case of some type of major catastrophe, like I accidentally delete my database or Railway blows away my database for some reason, I hope they would never do that. But you have a way to basically have snapshots stored somewhere. Now, honestly, for a more like mission critical system, you probably want to use some type of database system that has backups and restores already built into it. At my work, we're using RDS. RDS has a way to periodically back up your database, and it has a nice feature where you can like restore your entire database to an instance, and then you can point your application to the new instance if you want to. You are still going to have data loss because unless you're backing up with like data streams, there's no way to guarantee that someone's progress on your application didn't get lost. But having 1 hour of data loss is probably a lot better than having complete data loss of your system. So at the very least, if you are running anything in production with a database, you should probably have backups somewhere. Now, let's say something happened and I lost my data. How would I actually restore this to a database? What you could do is you can spin up a new database, assuming that you have the same version that you had when you're using production. And then you can go to one of your snapshots, or you can download it to your laptop, or if you want to be a really good engineer, you probably find some type of script that you can easily run, which will point to this bucket, download it, and then you basically just need to run a couple commands to point to your now running database. You give it your file that you want to ingest, and then it should read over that SQL file that you kind of backed up and just automatically import it into your new database. Now, granted, when your database gets very, very large and you have tons and tons of data, this can be a very slow process, so you're going to have downtime for quite a while it's like running through your script and trying to import all this stuff across the network into your database. So you might have to find a nice solution where instead you have like 2 machines on the same network that are living really close to each other, so you can import that inside your network to really reduce the time it's taking to ingest all these files. But I would say if your database gets to that size, you should probably think of an alternative solution like a managed database that can handle scale and restoring scale for you. But in terms of the side projects I make on this channel and small businesses, this could be a solution you do. I would say if this is your approach, you should probably do a couple of fire drills and pretend like your database got corrupted and run through a scenario of how you would restore if something went bad. And if you want to become a good DevOps engineer, everything should be automated. So like this whole thing, there should probably be a single command you run in a GitHub action or a Circle CI pipeline or whatever that's going to do all this for you so that you don't have to do any type of manual intervention to get your database restored and point your application to a potentially new database. All right, that about wraps up this video. If you have a different approach as to how you like to run your databases in production and how you like to back up snapshots and restore them, leave a comment so we can all kind of learn from it. Do you guys use RDS on your production databases? Do you use something like PlanetScale? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. All right, have a good day and happy coding.